Hello, RTS family. My name is Christy, and I have been teaching at MS57 with Road to Success for a couple of years, working with students on making all kinds of recipes. And just more recently, before the schools closed, I was working at Level Up. But now I'm home, like the rest of us, quarantined, and so I'm coming to you from my kitchen. Even though I can't see you or hear you, I'm excited to know you're out there. That makes me feel good. We got a sunny day finally, so that's wonderful. And we're gonna make today mac and cheese bites, okay? But I'm gonna break it down for you into two pieces because you actually have two different types of mac and cheese you can make when you're gonna bake it. The first part of it is already a mac and cheese you can eat if you don't feel like baking it or can't bake it, right? So it's kind of a nice thing to know, and that sauce will be used for a lot of other stuff. All right, so first things first, we always have to wash our hands before we start cooking. And for those of you who were in cooking or know this already, it's the same protocol as we're having to do today for the virus, right? So it's 5 basic steps you can get down to one word. So it's water, soap, scrub, rinse, dry. Those are the 5 steps, and it's going to be better and important to not be trying to use sanitizer when you're cooking unless it's the only thing you have, because sanitizer doesn't completely get all the germs and dirt off your hands, and also it can get the flavor of the alcohol or whatever's in the sanitizer into your food. So it's always food safety protocol to be washing your hands, right? So it's the same thing that we're doing, like I said, for the rest of what's going on in today's world, right? So today I'm using these ruffles, they're called, but they're just like kind of these funny little spirals. They're pretty cool. They're a little bit big, so I hope they're gonna work for the mac bites. They're perfect for just making macaroni and cheese, but so I cooked the pasta ahead of time just to make sure that it was ready. And I'm just gonna drain it now and leave it to the side, okay? But you see that it's cooked. You can see it actually on the top of the stove. Just be real careful doing this if you're by yourself, that you have hot pads, and don't put your face too close to where the steam comes up after you pour the noodles into the strainer, because it will burn your face. And it's very hot. You're gonna make sure to really shake the water off of your pasta, because if you leave a lot of water in it, that'll end up really ruining your sauce, right? It will end up watering down your sauce. So now you can see our pasta's ready. And I'm just using a vegetable pasta, so they create the colors with vegetables, and you really don't taste them, but they just kind of look pretty and you get a little bit more nutrients in it. They use different things. I think in this one, they're probably using peppers often. And okay, this one's spinach, tomato, carrot. So that's how they get the colors, but sometimes they use peppers, and sometimes they use, what else have I seen? I guess peppers is the main other one that I've seen, but then usually it's tomatoes and carrots that get the orange and the other colors. All right, so we're gonna put that to the side. We're gonna start making now our sauce, okay? So what I'm gonna do, and this is the base of a lot of sauces. It's called a Roux, R-O-U-X. It's a French word, and it's the same amount of butter and flour. So if you're gonna use 2 tablespoons butter, you're gonna use 2 tablespoons of flour, and about 1.5 cups, 1.75 cups of milk. So almost 2 cups of liquid. It could be actually broth or milk or some other liquid, but you're gonna match that up, right? And so this is probably about 2 tablespoons that I've got here in my butter dish, but I'm not 100% sure, so I'm going to check it on a full stick of butter, right, which has all the tablespoons on it. Whoops, that was upside down. All the tablespoons on it, so you can tell what is 2 sticks of butter, what is 2 tablespoons of butter, right? So here I'm just going to hope you can see this. It's always a little tricky to get this stuff. Maybe if I do it over here. See if it comes out a little bit better on this. Well, it's a little bit bright in here today. It's either dark or too bright. It's a little hard to get the lighting just right. But you can see that in a stick of butter is 8 tablespoons. So if I am looking to measure this stick of butter against this this piece I've got in my butter dish, it's just about 2 tablespoons, right? Because here's 1 and here's 2. So it's maybe like a little bit more. It doesn't really matter, but I'll cut a little bit off. So we're gonna start out by melting this butter on a low heat. We don't want it to burn. Oh, you know what? I forgot to take my flour out today. Hold on 1 second. And I'm not gonna be able to reach it. So I've got my handy little step stool here that folds nice and flat. Okay, so get my flour. And like I said, I'm going to use 2 tablespoons. So that's the biggest spoon on the measuring set, right? You have usually 4 spoons, and the biggest one is a tablespoon. And I'm just going to get a big scoop, and then I'm going to level it off with my finger, right? The fatter part of my finger, the thicker part of my finger. All right, I'm going to leave that here for right now. While I'm waiting for that butter to melt, I'm going to start grating my cheese. And I'm using today pepper jack. I've been really into pepper jack cheese lately, but literally any cheese will work on this. And you can mix cheeses. Sometimes I'll put other cheeses in, but of course cheddar's the traditional one. But people make it with Swiss cheese, they make it with Gouda, they make it with all kinds of stuff, smoked cheeses, whatever you like. And you want about an equal amount of cheese to your sauce. So it's, going to be about 1.5 cups of cheese, something like that. It doesn't have to be exact. Okay, our butter's melting up nicely. But I've got my measuring cup here, so let's see how much we've got. And you see how fast that was. We're using the bigger side of the grater, right? If we try to use the smaller holes, it's gonna all get stuck in there and we won't be able to get it out. So you're usually, for soft things, gonna use the big holes. And for harder things, you can start using some of the other smaller holes, right? This one you can zest with, and you take just the skin off of oranges or lemons to get things nicely infused with that flavor. Let's see, want a little bit more cheese here, I think. Want at least 1 cup. Okay, our butter is almost melted. And then we're gonna stir in our flour. I'm gonna let our flour cook a little bit, because if we don't let the flour cook a little bit, you'll and if this ever happens to you, you'll realize what I'm talking about. You end up with the flavor of the flour. So it's not really that tasty in something like this, right? So this is gonna be actually about half of this cheese here. You can also get already grated cheese. That's an easy way to use. And that used to be more expensive than the ones that weren't grated, but I think now often there's some pretty good deals on that. So, but I don't know, somehow I like to do it myself. And there wasn't any pepper jack already grated at the store, so. And like I said, for some reason, this has been like my favorite cheese, my favorite quarantine cheese. All right, so I've been liking spicier things lately. Okay, so perfect. Now this is done. I'm gonna get my wooden spoon. Remember, if you're using any kind of pan that has a no stick surface, you always want to make sure to use a soft utensil with it so you don't scrape up the coating on the pan, because that's really not good for you to do. That it can start getting those pieces of the coating into your food. If you have a regular pan, it doesn't really matter, but all right, so now you can see what's going on here in the pot. All right, I'm gonna get 1 more tablespoon, because remember I had 2 tablespoons of butter, so 2 tablespoons of flour. And then because we're gonna be making first a cream sauce, so if there's anything that you like with a cream sauce, this is how you're gonna make the cream sauce. So we're gonna get this nice and smooth inside the pan. So you can see it's kind of bubbling up. And we just wanna stir it enough that it gets smooth. Make sure that the flame is not too high. A lot of cooking is about patience, right? You can always turn it up, but if you turn it up too much in the beginning, it can change it and make it hard to recapture what you're trying to do. I'm gonna let that flour cook for a few minutes. I'm gonna crack my egg now, because that's gonna get added into our mixture. Remember to throw the egg away right away. Don't put it down anywhere, just throw it away. And then you're gonna wanna rinse your hands off with some warm water. If you get a lot of egg on your hands, you might wanna use soap again, but if you have just got a little bit, you can Just rinse it off because we already washed them thoroughly before. And remember that raw eggs and raw chicken can have a bacteria in them, not always, but they can, that can get you sick, that can make your tummy not feel well. And especially in today's situation, you don't really want any other problems to happen to you physically, right? So you always want to make sure to be really careful with chicken and raw eggs. So I'm just using regular whole milk. You can use a lower fat one if you want. And the trick here now is going to be to pour this milk in very slowly while in a sort of steady stream while I continue to stir. And it might look a little lumpy at first, but if you keep stirring, it's going to be okay. I'm going to get some more because I need about 1.5 cups of milk. And what's going to happen is as this thickens up, it's actually thickening up really nice, so very quickly. But I'm going to let it thicken a little bit more, and then I've got my cream sauce, right? And I can just put salt and pepper or any other seasonings in it that I like. And then I'm going to do about another 1/2 cup, I think. Get that in there. Yeah, this is good. And we're just going to keep stirring it all in and just let it go in slowly. There's a science to this. The relationship between the flour and the butter and the milk creates this lovely thing we call sauce. And a lot of times you use this same treatment to thicken up the sauce of something for a stew or a soup. You can often do this, and it does the same, does what you want it to do, right? In terms of thickness and giving you a nice, creamy, beautiful sauce. Okay, so we're gonna keep an eye on this. We're gonna stir it a little bit, and as it gets about halfway thicker than it is now, you can see when you take the spoon up, you can see how liquidy it is, right? Oops, and we got a little bit of flour that didn't get all stirred up, so we want that, because that's when you hear people talk about lumpy sauces. It's because all the flour didn't get totally blended into the liquid, right? I had overcooked this roux a little bit, but there are certain times when you want that roux to be overcooked, which is when you make gumbo. Okay, gumbo is a famous New Orleans, Louisiana dish. Has a French influence, hence the roux, right? Which is a French technique. And they are the ones who really make the best gumbo, or at least they think so, and I think they're pretty right about it. Okay, so I'm gonna take my egg, and I'm gonna just beat it up a little bit with a fork, so that when we blend it into our macaroni and cheese, it's already, you want it to be beaten a little bit before you do that step. All right, so this is going nicely. I'm gonna, whoops, I also pre-greased my muffin pans. A lot of times I use a silicone ones, which is made out of this same stuff that the hot pad is. It's very flexible, almost like a rubber. And that is really great because you never have to worry about things sticking in that. I only have these with me here today. So I actually have a cooking spray bottle that I can add my own oil to. So I just sprayed it with some olive oil, but if you have a cooking spray, you can use that. If you don't, you can just take a small piece of paper and take some of your butter, just a little bit of your butter, and grease your pan. That's another way to do it, okay? Or margarine, whatever you have. Or if you just had oil, you could just put a little bit of oil on your paper towel and do that. You don't want to make too much of that because you don't want it to get too greasy, but you want to make sure that something doesn't stick, right? Okay. So you're gonna, this is almost there. I don't know if you can tell exactly, but it's getting a little bit thicker. And then of course when we put the cheese in, it's gonna get thicker. I'm gonna put some salt and pepper in it now because we want to get the seasonings in. This is a pepper grinder that also has coriander in it, so that's kind of a nice added little flavor. I'm gonna use my everyday seasonings from Trader Joe's, not to give them a plug, but I really love this seasoning. It's got garlic and onion and red chili peppers that are grinded up in the grinder, so that's really nice. And then it might need a little bit of extra salt because the macaroni will take up a lot of the salt. So you want to just get maybe a little more salt. We'll taste it right before we finish it to see that we get the right amount of salt and flavoring in this. A lot of people will put onion powder and garlic powder in macaroni and cheese, which is delicious. You can also do it with fresh onion and garlic in the beginning when you're melting the butter. You can saute the onion and the garlic and then add the flour, and that gives a lot of really nice flavor. All right, so that's pretty good. I think I'm gonna add the cheese to it because it's gonna thicken up a lot, and it starts thickening up very quickly as it cooks longer. All right, so we're gonna just dump in all of our cheese, our grated cheese, or cheeses, depending on what you're gonna use. Get the rest of this off my cutting board, because why not, right? All right, I'm just gonna stir that in. Let it melt up, and then voila, I've got a beautiful cheese sauce that I could use for a bunch of things, right? So I could use it for broccoli. I actually pre-cooked a little bit of broccoli before I joined you, and I'm gonna actually add my I'm gonna put a little cheese sauce on that because it's so yummy. Or if I wanted to do a loaded baked potato, that's really good. You can also make a broccoli cheddar or broccoli cheese soup. So it's really nice to know how to make a cheese sauce. And you see how fast that is, right? It's just, once you know it, right? So it's just, basically the same amount of butter or oil and flour and liquid, right? And you're gonna get a sauce. All right, so you see how nice and smooth that is now? So I'm just gonna, well, this is a hard spoon to spoon it with because it's got holes in it, but I'm just gonna get a little bit of cheese on there because that's gonna be a really yummy addition to this. I like to add this broccoli right into my mac and cheese, but you can also add meat or peppers or anything else you like. All right, so let's get our macaroni in here. And we're gonna now put in our cheese sauce. So actually, let's taste the cheese sauce. Let's see if we think it has enough. I'm gonna turn it off now so it doesn't get too thick. Let's see. Pretty good. But I do think it needs a little bit more salt. And I might just actually salt up the macaroni a little bit. Remember to be careful with the salt. You can always add more. This is my really cool Himalayan pink salt. So it's coming from the mountains in the part of the world where Mount Everest is, right? Tibet and Nepal and India. So it's a really cool area, and they have really beautiful salt that comes out of the mountains there. Okay, so I'm gonna just pour in my sauce. I'm not gonna put it all in because maybe it's a little bit too much. I can, again, always add more, but once I've done too much, then I may not like it as much. But that's a really personal thing. I like things pretty saucied up. So I'm gonna probably usually add a bit more. So now this is macaroni and cheese too. This is just one type. Remember, there's so many variations of macaroni and cheese. There's no right or wrong. We might all have our favorites, but try experimenting with different ones to see what you like, And also sometimes you just don't have the time to bake it, or you don't have an egg on hand. And so you can still make it, and here it is, right? So this is one variation of it that's delicious. And it's the beginning of how you would bake it, right? So I'm gonna take some out just so I can have some that's not baked. And we're gonna give it a taste quickly, and I think it's gonna be really, really good, just like this. This could be perfect. Really yummy. I'm gonna taste the broccoli too. I like that spicier cheese. Really good. Okay, really good. You might be able to tell I'm kind of hungry. Okay. Now I want to bake it. So now I'm gonna add my beaten egg. Let's put this over here. You can see it. And I'm just gonna pour that in. And just stir it up. And now this is what we're gonna end up baking. Now some people also add breadcrumbs to this. I have some breadcrumbs. I was thinking I could sort of add some breadcrumbs. We can also put a little bit of extra cheese on the top. That's always a good idea. You can put a little bit of extra butter if you want on the top, or margarine, whatever you're using. It's going to get a little bit of extra cheese for us. Okey-doke. So now I am going to put this into the cups. And just remember, if you get anything on the outside of the cups, you really want to wipe that off because it'll start burning as it's cooking, and then that kind of is not a great smell, of course. It's hard to clean the pan at that point, and also it might end up getting the burn flavor into whatever it is you're cooking, right? So you don't really want that. So, you know, it's only a little, it's a very thin amount of it on the top of the pan, and that's what could actually start to burn, right? All right, so we're just gonna fill them pretty much to the top, and they're gonna be beautiful little mac and cheese muffins, or what they call bites. So it's great if you are trying to cook for a few different people, right? And, or if you need to just have something quickly on the, you know, to grab on the go. Once it cools off, it's really easy to eat. Some people do these as hors d'oeuvres at parties, right? Appetizers. So they're just kind of fun, but we could also take all of this and bake it in a bigger pan. Just takes longer too, right? When you do the little bites, it's actually very fast. Okay, so now we have this. Didn't really get too much on the top, but I'll just take my paper towel and just make sure, wipe off any sauce, like I said, that we don't want to burn on the outside of the little cup. Okay, put everything back in that needs to go back in. We're gonna add a little bit of cheese to the top, because that's gonna make sure that it kind of browns up enough. And we're gonna see. Now the traditional pasta or, you know, noodle to use in a mac and cheese is what? The elbow macaroni. It's nice and small, so it kind of sticks together very nicely in a muffin cup. I'm hoping this one will work. I haven't used these before. So they might be a little bigger than I was expecting, but I think they'll work. The other day I only had rigatoni, which is quite a big fat pasta, and I was able to make them with that, but it didn't look as pretty as the the elbow or the smaller pasta, because it really sticks together like a little muffin, right? Alrighty, so this is ready to go. I have a 350 oven going. I'm gonna stick it into the middle of the oven. Just remember, if you're doing any oven work, to make sure you're with somebody who's helping you, or that you're being super, super careful, and that you are always using a hot pad, right, like this, or something that you can get things in and out of the oven without burning yourself, and that you're going to be very safe. Okay. All right. These are ready. And remember, I mentioned patience before. This process of cooling this properly is an art of patience. Practice on the art of patience, because it's hard. You want to take them out and put them on a plate. You want to eat them. You want to share them. So letting them cool is always tricky. Remember to turn your oven off. And remember, this is still very hot. Might be good to cool it a little bit, not on the top of the oven, just because the oven's hot, right? And the top is hot too. So always remember that when you have your oven on, the whole oven top gets hot as well, right? So it's really important to be careful. All right, so I'm putting it on a cloth on another surface here, right? And you can see that these look really nice. And we hope they hold together as a muffin, right? Definitely the elbows make it look more like one consistent piece, but I like the way this looks myself. I don't mind it, right? So that's pretty nice. And like I said, it needs about 5 minutes to cool. We cooked it for about 15 minutes is what it needs, but it depends on your oven. Ovens vary greatly. And if like you were doing this in a toaster oven, it might take a little bit longer. Like, so it really depends. You got to play with it a little bit. And really you just want to brown it up. Remember, everything else is already cooked, so it's really just your egg, but it's one egg. It's going to cook pretty fast. So while we're waiting for those to cool, I'm going to get a plate to put them on, and I can actually take them out of the muffin tins, and hopefully they don't stick too much, right? Hopefully I greased it enough to make it work. But let's review what we made today, right? So here's our cheese sauce. So this is like a great thing to have. It looks a little bit thick now, but it's not going to be a problem if you heat it up. And remember, if you want to add a little bit of liquid to it. We made our broccoli with cheese sauce, which is really yummy. We made our first macaroni and cheese with just the sauce, also delicious, like totally great. You don't really need to bake it. It's just another added thing that makes it really yummy, and it gives it that kind of almost like egg custard and noodles, and so it's a little drier preparation, right? It's a little bit different in that way, but also really yummy. And for some people, that's the really traditional one, right? And then we made our mac and cheese bites baked with our egg, and then we made our raspberry yogurt, right? I did sneak in a few little chocolate chips on this. Let's see if you can see this better. Here to make a little smile face for you. So I think I have to turn it the other way. Let's see. They're mini chips, so it's not bad for you. All right, and so let's see if we are ready to, I'm gonna use a knife first to kind of just move around the cup to see if I can get it out, right? But if it's not ready, I'm gonna have to wait. Yeah, it seems like it's kind of working. So I'm just gonna go all the way around each one, right? So I can loosen it from the sides. I'm gonna try to get the tip of my knife a little bit under the bottom of it to see if it's coming away easily, and luckily it seems to be. So that's nice. All right, we're getting all the way around all of it. Oh man, these are good. They smell so good, if I do say so myself. And mac and cheese is one of those things that's considered a real comfort food, right? For a lot of us, when we eat stuff like this, it just makes us feel kind of happy in our soul and nourished and nurtured, right? And it's just, that's what we mean by comfort food, I think. And a lot of us are cooking a lot of comfort food right now because we need some comfort in this strange and different and difficult time we're in. And I miss you all so much. I'm hoping you're well. I'm hoping your families are well and that you are healthy and safe. Remember to practice all the guidelines so that we can try to get out of this whole situation. The more we do the things we need to do, the faster we can get back to a different normal, right? It's going to be a different world, but it will be hopefully more like what we're used to. Okay, see, I went a little bit too fast on this one, and it wasn't quite ready, but you get the idea anyway, so just be patient. Be more patient than I'm being right now. We can get one of these out so you can see it out of the, but yeah, the more out of the cup, but the more you cool it, the easier it will just come. Oops, no, it's really not ready. See if any, yeah, I was rushing it. Let me try to go under it in the middle. Well, nope, I'm kind of messing these up because they're not ready to come out. This one might be. Let's see, and also it maybe needed a little bit more grease in it than I put in. Let's see. This one's pretty good. I'm gonna slip that little part back underneath the bottom. Whoops, got a little bit else that dropped out of it. So it's not always gonna be perfect, but guess what? Your stomach doesn't care. It's gonna taste good. So see, there we've got our little mac and cheese bite. I'm gonna take a bite of my mac and cheese bite and see if it's good, because I think it probably will be. Now I'm gonna mess it up anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But it's nice when they stay together really well. So when these cool off, I'll show you them next week. When we come back, I'll have a picture of them. To me, really, really good. It's so interesting how it changes when you bake it and how it just totally changes the whole thing. Very good. Needs a little more salt to me. It's got a little bit of the bite. It's a hot cheese, which I love. So it's pretty good. All right, y'all. So I'm going to say goodbye for now. Wishing you well, sending you much love from my kitchen to yours, and see you on the next Cooking on the Road with RTS. Stay well.